For millions of years, humanity was just another species struggling to survive. We had no cities, no kingdoms, and no understanding of the world around us. Yet, through countless generations, we slowly changed the course of history. Every discovery brought us one step closer to the civilization we know today. This is the story of how humans conquered the Earth. From our earliest ancestors to the future that still lies ahead. The world was once ruled by creatures unlike anything alive today. For more than 160 million years, dinosaurs dominated the land, the seas, and the skies. They survived changing climates, shifting continents, and countless challenges that would have wiped out many other forms of life. It seemed as though their reign would never end. Then, everything changed. Around 66 million years ago, a mountain-sized asteroid crashed into the Earth with unimaginable force. The impact unleashed an explosion more powerful than billions of nuclear bombs. A massive shockwave raced across the planet. Wildfires spread through forests that had stood for millions of years. Towering waves crashed into distant coastlines. The collision threw enormous amounts of rock, dust, and ash high into the atmosphere. Within a short time, sunlight could no longer reach the surface. Temperatures dropped. Plants began to die. The food chain slowly collapsed. Animals that had once ruled the Earth suddenly faced a world they could no longer survive. One by one, the giants disappeared. But extinction was never the end of life. Hidden beneath the fallen forests and the darkened skies, small mammals continued to endure. They were not the strongest, they were not the fastest. Most were no larger than a modern squirrel. They survived because they could adapt. They found shelter where larger animals could not. They needed far less food, and they could reproduce much quicker. As millions of years passed, the Earth slowly recovered. New forests covered the land. The climate continued to change. The descendants of those tiny survivors spread into almost every environment. Some returned to the oceans. Some learned to glide through the air. Others climbed into the trees, where a new chapter of evolution quietly began. Living among the branches required excellent vision, flexible shoulders, and hands that could firmly grasp tree limbs. These abilities were not created for building tools or writing books. They evolved simply to survive. Yet they would eventually become some of the greatest advantages any species had ever possessed. Without realizing it, evolution was preparing the foundation for something extraordinary. Not a king, not a monster, but a creature that would one day reshape the entire planet. The first true ancestors of humanity were about to appear. The earliest human ancestors did not look like modern humans. They lived in the forests of Africa millions of years ago. Their bodies were still shaped for climbing trees. Strong arms helped them move through branches with remarkable agility. Curved fingers allowed them to hold on to tree trunks and vines. Life in the forest provided food, shelter, and protection from many predators. For millions of years, this way of life remained almost unchanged. Then the environment began to transform. The climate became cooler and drier. Dense forests slowly gave way to open woodlands and vast grasslands. The trees that had once covered the landscape became fewer with every passing generation. Finding food was no longer as simple as moving from one tree to another. Many primates remained in the forests. Others were forced to spend more time on the ground. It was a dangerous decision. Large cats waited in the tall grass. Giant crocodiles guarded rivers. Powerful birds of prey searched for small animals from above. Every journey across the open land carried enormous risks. Survival now depended on adapting to an entirely different world. Over countless generations, small changes began to appear. Some individuals could stand slightly taller than others. They were able to look above the tall grass and spot danger from a greater distance. Walking on two legs also freed their hands. Those hands could now carry food, gather useful objects, and protect their young while moving across the landscape. At first, these changes seemed insignificant. No single generation noticed the transformation. But evolution never works in a single lifetime. It shapes countless generations through tiny advantages that slowly become permanent. Among these early ancestors was a species that would become one of the most important in human history. Scientists call it Australopithecus. They stood much shorter than modern humans. Their brains were still relatively small. They could climb trees with ease, yet they also walked upright for long distances across the African plains. They lived between two different worlds. One foot remained in the trees. The other had already stepped onto the ground. That single step would eventually change the future of life on Earth forever. Millions of years had passed since our ancestors first began walking on two legs. They could travel farther than before. They could carry food across the open landscape, but they still depended almost entirely on nature. Everything began to change around 2.5 million years ago. A new member of the human family appeared in Africa. Scientists call this species Homo habilis. The name means handyman. It was given because these early humans showed something that had never been seen before. They did not simply use objects they found in nature. They deliberately shaped them into tools. A single piece of stone could now become a sharp cutting edge. For the first time, nature was no longer accepted exactly as it was. It could be changed to solve a problem. That simple idea became one of the greatest turning points in human history. With sharp stone tools, our ancestors could cut meat more easily. They could break open large bones to reach the nutritious marrow hidden inside. They could strip branches and prepare wooden sticks for different tasks. Every successful tool increased their chances of survival. Generation after generation, these skills improved. Young members of the group learned by watching older ones. Knowledge was no longer lost with each generation. It could be passed from one mind to another. This marked the beginning of something far more powerful than strength. It marked the beginning of culture.
Even so, Homo habilis was still small. Its brain was larger than that of earlier ancestors, but much smaller than our own. Its body still carried many features suited for climbing. It lived in a dangerous world, filled with powerful predators. Survival remained a daily struggle. Yet evolution was already moving forward. Over hundreds of thousands of years, another human species began to emerge. This new ancestor was taller, stronger, and remarkably similar to modern humans in the way it moved. Scientists know this species as Homo erectus. Its name means upright man. Unlike its predecessors, Homo erectus had long legs built for walking great distances. Its body was better adapted for life on open grasslands than in dense forests. For the first time, our ancestors were becoming true travelers. And with them, the story of humanity was about to leave its birthplace.
Homo erectus did more than walk farther. It began to change the way humans lived. Its body required more energy than any earlier ancestor. Finding enough food became one of the greatest challenges. Stone tools continued to improve. They became sharper, stronger, and more carefully shaped. Some were designed for cutting. Others were made for chopping or scraping.
These tools allowed our ancestors to make better use of every animal they hunted or scavenged. But another discovery would transform human life even more. At some point, Homo erectus learned how to control fire. The first flames were probably taken from natural wildfires started by lightning. Keeping a fire alive was easier than creating one from nothing. That single achievement changed everything. Fire brought light to the darkness. It kept dangerous predators at a distance. It provided warmth during cold nights. For the first time, humans could remain active long after the sun had disappeared. Cooking became another revolution. Raw food was often difficult to chew and digest. Cooking softened meat and plants, making them easier to eat. It also released more energy from the same amount of food. Many scientists believe this steady source of extra energy helped support the gradual growth of larger brains over hundreds of thousands of years. Life around the fire changed people in another way. Families and small groups spent more time together. Experiences could be shared. Skills could be demonstrated. Some researchers believe these quiet evenings may have helped communication become more complex. The fire did more than protect human life. It brought people closer together. Without realizing it, our ancestors were building the foundations of every community that would one day exist. The journey of humanity was no longer defined by survival alone. It was beginning to be shaped by knowledge. Knowledge gave our ancestors an advantage that no other animal possessed. Each generation no longer had to begin from the beginning. It could build upon what the previous one had already discovered. This slow accumulation of knowledge changed the course of evolution. Homo erectus also became the first human species to leave Africa. Small groups gradually expanded into the Middle East, Asia, and eventually parts of Europe. They did not know where they were going. They simply followed rivers, changing seasons, and the animals they hunted. Every new landscape presented unfamiliar challenges. Some regions were colder than anything they had experienced before. Others were covered by dense forests or vast open plains. Surviving in these environments demanded constant adaptation. Their long legs allowed them to travel remarkable distances. Their bodies were also uniquely suited for endurance. Unlike most animals, humans could cool themselves efficiently by sweating. This allowed them to keep moving long after many other animals had begun to overheat. Some scientists believe this endurance played an important role in a hunting strategy known as persistence hunting. Instead of relying on speed, early humans could slowly exhaust their prey over many hours. It was a remarkable advantage in the harsh environments of prehistoric Africa. For nearly 2 million years, Homo erectus remained one of the most successful human species ever to exist. It survived changing climates. It crossed continents. It mastered new technologies. And it laid the foundation for every human species that would follow. Yet evolution had not reached its final destination. Deep within Africa, another branch of the human family was beginning to emerge. This new species would eventually paint on cave walls, create complex languages, build civilizations, and one day wonder about its own origins. Its name was Homo sapiens.